Hello, my name's Barry Sherlock. This is the second of a two-part project on digital publishing organised by the Hampshire Archives Trust and the Hampshire Field Club. The first part, entitled From Research to Page, can be seen together with all the other sessions on the hands-on local history project on the YouTube channel of the Hampshire Field Club, which is accessible from its website. The first part deals with picture research for digital images by Sam Butcher of the Hampshire Cultural Trust and the creation of pages for digital production by Martin Coppin of the Andover History and Archaeological Society. It was hosted by Sue Woolgar. This session now, called From Page to Product, was hosted by Mary Harris of the Romsey Local History Society and organised by Roger Otterwill and myself. It starts with a presentation by John Owen Smith. Joe is a local historian, dramatist and publisher from Headley, about 9 miles from Alton. He not only puts out the results of his research in books, but also in dramas, including community touring plays and talks and exhibitions. He publishes books by himself and helps others to do so. So here is Joe's talk.
Today we're going to talk about publishing on demand from digital files, or as I prefer to call it, how to self-publish without paying a fortune. Well, let's start with the basics. First of all, you need to create your book. Now, either you're doing it or somebody has sent you some copy which you're trying to typeset for them. But either way, it'll be on a word processor of some sort. And once you've set up the book the way you want it in the word processor, and we'll talk about that in a bit, you have to create a PDF file from that. And having done the insides of the book, you need to do the similar thing for the cover. I tend to use a desktop publisher for that. I use Microsoft Publisher. And again, once you've done that, you generate a PDF file from that. So you have 2 PDF files and you send them both to your chosen printer. And that's the start of the process. So let's look at it in some detail now. First of all, you need to choose your page size. Now, no doubt it will come to you probably typed up an A4 or something like that. You don't want an A4 book, so you have to decide what page size you want. And there are certain standards which it's best to choose from. And here are some examples of those standards. They tend to conform, roughly speaking, to what's called a golden rectangle. And that's the definition of a golden rectangle. Approximately 1.6 to 1 is the aspect ratio of the sides. And in particular, it's nothing like A4 and A5. If you publish on A4 or A5, it immediately smacks of being an amateur because it looks all different from the type of format of the other books in the bookshop, if that worries you. If I do the parish magazine, it doesn't worry me and I do it on A5. But for my books, which I'm going to put through a bookshop, I want them to look just like Penguins or any other trade paperback. And so I go for those the same sort of page sizes as they use. Again, the margins. It's very tempting sometimes to try and get as much crammed into a book as you can, but please be generous with your margins. There's nothing that looks more amateurish than seeing a book with very narrow margins. So I use, for the typical page sizes I've got up there, a top that's about 1.5 centimetres margin, bottom a bit larger, about 2.5, left and right about 1 3/4. If your book's got a lot of pages, then you'll probably need what's called a gutter, which means your inside edge margin needs to be a lot wider than your outside one. For smaller books, you can get away with having the same margin either side. Then, and you have to decide where you want to put your page number as well. I tend to put it right at the bottom, in the centre of the page, but you choose where you want it. It's your book. You can have it at the top, you can have it at the bottom, left and right, according to which page it's on. Entirely up to you, but it's a decision you have to make. And you have to leave enough room on the bottom margin to have a page number and not make it look too cramped with the text above it. Also, the fonts that you want to use. For my books, I tend to use Times Roman 11 point, which which is pretty much the same as they use in the Times newspaper, and it's very legible, which is why they use it in the Times newspaper, I assume. Some people prefer a sans serif font. That's a font without these little bits and pieces on the edges of the uprisers and cross risers. Calibri is a typical one, and that in fact is what I use for our parish magazine. But it's entirely up to you. You can mix them to a point, because if, for example, you want to box some comment or other, you can put it in a different font to the font that's in the rest of the book, just to make it stand out, and that's a possibility. Next thing you want to know is, well, how are you going to arrange your book? Are you going to have chapters or not? Are there going to be sections within the chapters? Are you going to have running headings along the top of the page? Are these going to change from chapter to chapter? Are you going to use footnotes at the end, bottom of each page, or are you going to have endnotes at the end of a chapter? Your decision. It's your book. There's no hard and fast rule as to how you should do it, but you need to make these decisions as you go along and sort your book out and do the typesetting. Also, what are you going to do about pictures, images? How are you going to put them in your book? Are you going to put them all together in one place, or are you going to spread them through the book? If you're going to spread them through the book, are you going to make sure that they're relevant to the text that's on that page? Or are you just maybe going to put images in just to lighten the tone of the book, just to make it more readable, if you like, and make somebody want to buy it a bit more? Because sadly, I'm sorry to tell you wordsmiths, but pictures do sell books. And then finally, indexing. Are you going to have an index or not? If you're going to have an index, are you going to get the software to generate it for you automatically, or are you going to go after the event and generate one manually? If you want to, if it's going to be a long index, then probably automatic is best, because if you then add extra pages before you finish the book, the index will change automatically. You don't have to redo it. If it's a short book, then possibly a manual index might be easier for you, because it's not a trivial matter doing an automatic index. You have to put little bits and pieces of code into your text, as I'll show you in the next screen. So just some hints here. Particularly if you get a document in from somebody else, put on your show. This is on Microsoft Word at least. There's a show hide thing at the top of the screen, which you can turn on or off, and that shows the space characters and line breaks and so forth on the page, and lets you see what the author has done. And in particular, I hope that the author has used tabs and not space characters, for example, for indentations, because they're terrible at using different number of space characters on different pages. And I've spent many hours going through somebody's text and trying to get all the space characters the same number all the way through the book. So if you can get them to use tabs, that much the better thing. Let's just show you this show and hide thing. Here's an example of one of my books, and that's got the show on. So for example, each of those little dots here is a space character, and you can see we're using 2 spaces between sentences, and we try and keep that the same between all of our sentences and not vary from 1 to 2 to 3, which I've seen people do. You see I'm using a tab for my indents and not doing it with spaces. Also, here's the little bits of code that you put in to generate your index. So for Dr. Quarrier, I would have to go search through the text and find all the occurrences of Dr. Quarrier and put this little bit of coding at each one in order to generate my index. Now that looks not too good, but if you turn it off again, then that's how the page looks without all those bits and pieces showing, and that's how it will show obviously in the final book. They didn't like the way I spelt workhouse, but that's tough because that's the way I'm going to spell it in this book. That's my decision. Right, let me show you the first 12 pages of this particular book, the one that we've been talking about. There's the first 6. There's the second 6. So the first page I've got here is what's called a half title page, and I guess it's a page where you could use for signing your copies of your books. It's got plenty of white space on it. I put it there simply because that's what people seem to do in the trade, and I want my books to look as much like trade books as possible. So they do it, and therefore I do it. You don't have to do it at all if you don't want to. And on the back of it, I've used the backside for a little line drawing that my wife did for me, relevant to the subject of the book. And it just adds a little bit to the book. When somebody opens it for the first time and looks, I say, oh, there's line drawings. I like those. Let's have a look further into the book, you hope. The next page is the full title page with the full title of the book and who wrote it. Then on the back of that, I put the details of the publication. I'll show you that in a bit more detail in a minute. So here, if you like, on the publisher's note page is the first, what you might call proper page of the book. And notice I start the page numbers showing there. That's page number 5. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. I start showing them on 5. Why do I do that? Because the trade does it. Because I want to look just like the other books in the bookshop. You don't have to do it that way. You can start this as page 1 if you want. You can put Roman numerals on these pages if you want. Or you can show the page numbers there if you want. It's entirely up to you. It's your book. But this is the way I do it because that seems to be the way that most other people do it these days. On the back of that, I just put a little dedication to my mother and father, as it happens, for thanking them for having me. And then we're into the contents page. And this could be generated automatically if you want, if it's very complicated. On this particular one, I generated it manually because it wasn't too long. And on the back of that, I've got the illustrations and maps list of those with page numbers. And then we're into the forward part of the book. Again, I got somebody to write a nice forward for me, telling everybody what a nice book it was and how they should buy it, which is thanks very much, Lawrence, very good of you. And on the back of that, I've stuck an image because, as I say, it lightens the book a bit to have these images. That particular image has no particular relevance to this part of the book, but I thought it would be nice to put it there anyway. And then we're into the author's note where I'm saying why I wrote this book and what it's all about. And after that, we're into the book proper and I actually tell the story. Yes, so this publisher information page. What I do, and again, there's no hard and fast rule, you can do what you want. I tend to give the history of this. So this particular one was first published September 2002, but it was based on material previously published, and I give that indication there. I say I publish it, and it gives my name and address and telephone number and so forth, so that if they want to buy a book, they know where to come to. And I put this copyright thing here. You don't have to. If you don't put that, you still got copyright. It doesn't negate your copyright if you don't put the copyright symbol, but I tend to just because I think it's sort of expected. And here's the old rights reserved, blah-de-blah-de-blah bit that you see. And again, that really doesn't mean a great deal. Put it if you want or not if you don't. And right at the bottom here, I put the ISBN number and I put who it's printed by, if you know that at the time. Again, it's not mandatory. So that's the publisher information page that I do. Do whatever you want. It's your book. Right, so that's the first 12 pages. So once you've done that and you're happy with how the book looks and you've gone through it and through it and through it, all the pages, and made sure it's just how you'd like it to look as a proper book, then what you do, in Word at least, is to export to PDF. And you press that button, create PDF, and you get a PDF file. And having done that, now you can start looking into the cover. Here's the cover for the particular book that we're talking about. Obviously, the front cover is on the right, the back cover is on the left, and in the middle, we've got the spine. And just, oh, yes, going back a bit, sorry. You'll see up here I've got what are called crop marks. That shows where it's likely that the printer's going to cut page. So you're going to lose what's outside those crop lines. And when they cut it, it will look like that. So make sure everything you need is inside those crop lines. Some printers like you to send it with crop marks there, and some printers don't want them. It's up to you. Well, not up to you, actually. It's up to the printer to tell you what they want, and then you have to do what they ask you to do. Now, the spine here, notice which way it is. It's so that if you stack the books face upwards, the spine is readable. Interesting that before the late 50s in Britain, they used to do the spine the other way up. And then in the late 1950s, they changed it so that it's this way up now. In France, they still do it that. If you look at French books, you stack them face up on a pile in the shop and you can't read the spines because they're all upside down. So anyway, that's just something to bear in mind when you do your spine. And so having done your cover and happy with that, you create a PDF of your cover, which means you've now got two PDF files, one for the inside of the book, one for the cover of the book. and you're ready to go. And you send them to your chosen printer and you start the print process. Now I'm going to talk about the particular printer outfit that I use, which is Amazon KDP, sorry, get it right. And let's see the advantages and disadvantages of using these particular people. Well, one major advantage is it's free, absolutely free to set up. If you can use a computer and generate these PDFs just the way you want them, you can set it up on their system and you don't pay any money whatsoever. Not only that, but you can keep changing things. So you might print a few copies and then suddenly you find, oh, I've made a mistake, or you might find I've got new information coming in now which I'd like to add or like to change. You can do that. You can change the file, you can upload another file, and next time you print, you'll get the altered file. You'll not only want them to sell your books, but you want hard copies yourself to sell locally, I'm sure. And the price that they charge to print is very competitive compared with other printers. So that's not an issue. But a great bonus of putting it up on Amazon, of course, is that they will sell your books worldwide without you having to lift a finger. They will get orders in through their website. They will print on demand for the customer. You won't even know about it. And at the end of the month, you get money into your bank account. That's a big plus, as I understand it. Some disadvantages. Well, they are a bit picky with, they won't put text on the spine of very thin books. Now, when I saw thin, I'm sort of under 100 pages. And their reasoning is that their print process isn't accurate enough to make sure that it actually will be on the spine and it might slip over onto the front cover. And I say to them, but I don't care. I'm sure I can live with that. I'd rather have text on my spine. And they say, well, you might, but unfortunately, we won't do it because when we do our sales, we don't want returns from customers. And that sort of thing, if the text bleeds over onto the front cover, that's the sort of reason why they might get returns from their customers, which is why they won't do it. Similar reason, they can be a bit fussy about the files, not the content. They don't care what's in the book as far as the content is concerned, but the look of the thing. They don't want returns. So they will be a bit fussy about whether your margins seem right or not, whether your images sort of go outside of where the margins should be, whether your covers in particular go outside their boundaries. But they do give very good information on their websites that you can look up, and so long as you look at that and abide by it, it's fine. No problem really at all. They do insist on you having a barcode. Now, you don't need a barcode to sell a book. The bookshops like it; they like you to have one, but there's no reason why you should if you really don't want to. But if you do it through this system, you will get a barcode on the back of your book. And if you don't have your own ISBN, they will give you one for free. So that's not an issue. But you must leave space on the back of your back cover for this barcode to appear. Also, they only do paperbacks. If you want to do hardbacks, this isn't the process for you. You have to go somewhere else. I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, but right now that's the situation. Equally, they don't have very many choices as to the sort of paper you can use inside your book. In fact, the choice is two, white or off-white. I know you've probably seen books in bookshops that should look very thick for the number of pages that are in them, and that's because they've chosen to use thick paper. But you can't do that with this system. You have to have what they've got. And also, if you want colour inside your book, this is a very pricey way of doing it. I have done books with colour inside. I've not gone with these people. I've taken it to someone else who can bring the colour pages together in the middle of the book and just charge me a colour print price for those particular pages, not for the rest of the book. But unfortunately, Amazon won't do that. And so if you've got any colour whatsoever inside your book that you want to show as colour, then they will charge the colour price for the whole of the book. Monochrome, no problem. Also, okay, a bit of a joke really, but they are American. They will wish you to have a nice day, and sometimes they won't quite get the message if you well, I don't have too many problems with them, but sometimes it's pretty obvious that the people you're liaising with at the other end of an email are Americans and not British. But I say no more. They're fine people, really. Okay, so once you've set yourself up with an account with these people, and you want to start a book, this is the first page you'll see. And you press this button here to start generating a paperback. This is my one, so you'll see I've already got books down there. But if you were starting afresh, you wouldn't have anything down the bottom here. You press that book for paperback, and you get a screen like this, where you have to put in your book title, whether it's a series, what's the edition number if you've got one, who the author is, onwards and downwards. You've got 4,000 words you can put in as descriptive text to go on their website, whether you've got the rights or not, which hopefully you have, any keywords you want to help sell this book, what category it is, whether it's fiction, non-fiction. You press that button and it comes up with a whole range of possibilities you can choose from, and whether it's got adult content. None of mine have, sadly. And then once you've filled all that, you press save and continue, and you'll get subsequent screens. And subsequent screens I won't bother to show you here, but they'll ask you to upload the files that you've created, the 2 PDF files, and they'll check they're okay, and you can check that online. Nothing's been printed on paper at this point, you'll note. So you can check them online, you'll see the book, you turn the pages, rather like on a Kindle, actually, to check that it looks all right. And then you'll set the cover price on the 3rd page, and we'll talk about cover prices in a minute. So once your book is up, you then, if you want hard copies yourself, you can order them through something called the author copies order page. And here it is for the particular book that we were talking about. So I can order any number I want here, up to 999. Well, I never do. I ordered probably about 10 or something like that. And you say where you are in the world, and they'll send them to you. And they'll take about a fortnight to come to you. And they'll come just like any other Amazon order by Amazon delivery. So obviously that's fine, and that's just like it is from any other printer. Okay, let's talk about pricing. I know it's a big issue with some people. The rule of thumb I was always given was your cover price should be about 3 times your print price. Well, in the case of the book we've just been talking about, the cost of printing is 70 pence for a cover and 1 penny a page with KDP Amazon. And for our particular book, it's 136 pages. And so the print cost per copy would be £2.06. So the rule of thumb would say your cover price should be £6.18. Well, in fact, I put £7.95 on my cover. I actually sell it to retailers at £5.50 because they want to make their profit, don't they, booksellers? So about 30% they normally look for, and that gives them roughly that. But I'll sell to you personally, if you come to me, for £6.50, because I get more than I do for selling to a bookshop that way, and I get it straight away. And I don't care if I have a little bit of a loss compared with the £7.95. And of course, you do like a bargain, don't you? So you're happy, and I'm happy. So that's an example of part of the range of my books. There are various different page sizes. That's a smaller size page. That's a larger size page. There are various, you can't see it here, but there are various different numbers of pages. That one, Peveril Papers, is 494 pages, quite a thick book, whereas that one is only 64, quite a thin book. So they go down the range. And here is my sales over the last few years and months, and they seem to be going up, which pleases me no end. And if you look down here, I'm getting about £100 a month for sitting doing nothing, and that suits me fine. So I hope that this has given you some sort of input, observation into how we do things. There's my website if you want to look up my books. And now I'm very happy to answer questions.
After Joe's talk, there was a lively Q&A, which covered the following points. Question: are sans serif fonts less readable than serif fonts? Answer: I certainly prefer to use a serif font, Times New Roman, as it looks more professional. Question: are pictures best spread throughout the text? Answer: yes, but you can't always do that if one section, say, has most of the pictures. Question: can you lay in running heads with, say, the book title on the left and the chapter on the right? Yes, But the trick with Word is to use quotes, new section, close quotes, rather than just a page break at the end of each chapter, and to disable quotes, same as previous, end quotes, on the running head that you want to change. Question: do you send out review copies? Answer: I used to, but now I don't bother. Question: you said A5 was not a very professional format. Yes, I like my books to look like penguins. Also, A5 is not a preferred size for Amazon. Question: you said it's free for Amazon to put up the book for on-demand printing, but how much do you get from a sale? Answer: yes, it costs nothing to put up the title. The income depends on the channel for sale, as bookshops need a discount. After Joe's talk, Glenn Gilbertson of the Alresford Historical Literary Society made a comment. He said that he had successfully used a printer, an on-demand printer, based in Peterborough, namely printondemand-worldwide.com. He added, "It's a very helpful site. It costs nothing to find out the cost implications of various choices, which is very useful when deciding the format at an early stage. As I said, you can also talk to them. They're in Peterborough. With their advice, you can do it all yourself, as I did, but they also offer various levels of design packages for a fee. They keep a copy of the PDF, so reprints are no problem." Joe's talk was followed by one from Zoe Viney, who is film curator at the Wessex Film and Sound Archive at the Hampshire Record Office in Winchester. She's been in post there since 2016, having first worked at the archive in 2010 alongside David Lee. Zoe's role is a grant-funded post made possible by the British Film Institute distributing national lottery funds. Her current project, Making History, aims to showcase the work of amateur filmmakers and encourage new accessions. She's also undertaking research on the collection at the Wessex Film and Sound Archive with a particular focus on gender and class for a PhD degree. So, here is Zoe's video.
Hello everybody, my name is Zoe Viney. I expect many of you will be familiar with Wessex Film and Sound Archive and with me, but for those of you who aren't, I thought it would be good to start off with an introduction. My name is Zoe and I'm Curator of Film at Wessex Film and Sound Archive, based at Hampshire Record Office in Winchester, just by the station. Many of you will already know. I first worked with the collection in 2010-2011 and then I rejoined in 2016, and I've been in post now since 2016 thanks to funding from the BFI awarding National Lottery money and of course through Hampshire Archives Trust. Today I'm going to talk to you about a number of things, including the most effective ways to make archive film part of your research, and some tips for identifying suitable film material in the catalogue, and also suggest some approaches for using film in your published results. So, about Wessex Film and Sound Archive. WFSA is a regional repository for historic film and sound based at Hampshire Record Office in Winchester. Now, WFSA covers part of what the old Wessex region, for various reasons it is only parts, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire. We have over 38,000 film and sound items, and over 12,000 of those are cinefilm. Films have been accessioned on the basis that the contents have intrinsic historic value. So it covers everything from professional broadcast material, the work of cine clubs, family collections, prominent figures, to social commentators and members of the public. Now, there are regional film archives up and down the country, which you may have heard of some of them or had interactions with them. The country is pretty well divided up between regional film archives, and so they can be a really reliable source for locating films featuring a particular location. They connect the regional film archives through a network known as FOLK, Film Archives UK. And so we're all in touch with one another, and it's a really great network for sharing best practice. How do I integrate archive film into a local history research project? So I'm often asked how to integrate film into a local history project. I think one of the biggest challenges of this is that researchers are often hoping to slot or fit into some film into their pre-existing projects, and locating the clip that is just right becomes incredibly challenging, if not almost impossible. There are a number of reasons why this can be the case. Films are catalogued by real people. So real people come to their cataloguing with their own subjectivities. They have areas of expertise or particular interests. Even in the most fact-based catalogue entry, you'll find areas of focus that might not make it into another person's cataloguing. For example, I have a specialism in the history of textiles and dress, and I typically always mention the clothing that is worn, but this isn't something that makes it into everybody else's cataloguing necessarily. Another thing to consider is that not all of our collection is catalogued to the fullest extent. Often, when we accession an item, we view the film and make an outline catalogue entry in order that the film can be logged and then accessed via the catalogue. Once the film is digitised, we work with volunteers to catalogue the films to a set template, but this hasn't always been the case. There are many examples where more detailed cataloguing is desired. We will get there eventually, it just takes a long time, particularly when we have an influx of material in large quantities. Then there is using the right words. So keywords and the things that you use to search the catalogue are some of the biggest challenges to accessing film material. How do we know that the search term that you will use to locate a film is going to be the same as we've recorded in the catalogue? Now, there are obviously rigorous standards around keywords that archives apply to collections, and in practice it can actually be a bit more tricky if you have a narrow focus. You'll yield far fewer results if you have a narrow focus. For example, if you're searching for Egbury, that might not bring back too many results, but starting with Andover or Whitchurch might give you some material to start with. These are challenges, but we can avoid all of these if we do something radical, if we start with the film. Yep, starting with the film itself as a springboard for local history research can blow the lid off all of these potential pitfalls, because film texts are an inherently rich visual source, which in themselves offer multiple avenues for research. It can be a great way to put archive film front and centre of your research, and the best way to do that is start with a location-based search. Regional film archives have typically always functioned within a geographical remit, so if the topic covered in the film is Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire or Oxfordshire, then you're likely to find it within Wessex Film and Sound Archive. Of all the variables of keyword searching, the most reliable way to locate material that might be of interest is through location. So if you're interested in, for example, Southampton, use this as your starting point and see where it takes you. When starting off with the film, you get the opportunity to play detective. You want to have a think about the people in the film. See if I've got an image for this. Yeah. You want to think about the people in the film. What clothes are being worn? Is it a hot and cold day? Can you tell whether it's winter or summer? Do we know who the filmmaker is? Are they on film and do they have a name? Is that recorded in the catalogue? What relationships can be seen on screen? Can we identify the mother, father, daughter, son, wife or husband, friend or business colleague? Is it what you would think of as being a family film, or is it something else? Is it a community film, a business or an industrially produced film? Think about the things that you can see in the film. So not the people, the things that feature in the film alongside the people. Are there toys, vehicles, tools, buildings? Is there a home? Is it a business or a factory? Reading what you can see on screen can be really helpful to interpreting the film material. Then we're thinking about location. So we started off looking at the location. Is it filmed inside or outside? It took a lot of light to film inside and quite a lot of technical skill, so outside was a lot easier. Is it a recognisable location? Is it a town or a city? So you may have started your research thinking you were looking at a film of Southampton, but then you end up finding places or shots of Winchester on screen. What does that tell us about the filmmaker and what they were doing and how they were choosing to record things? Are there any particular landmarks that can tell you where it is? Is this a different location to what you've seen in other parts of the film? We can also think about the film technique and different technicalities involved in filmmaking and what that can tell us about both the filmmaker and the things that they're recording. How long is the film? Is it very short or quite lengthy? Film stock cost a lot of money, so if it's a long film, it was going to be more expensive to produce. Are there any intertitles, so text written on screen between frames of visual elements? Wasn't that easy to do, so it shows some skill creativity, particularly if it was produced by hand. Is the film in colour or is it black and white? Colour film stock was very expensive, so colour film equals a wealthy filmmaker. Or if you have knowledge of the filmmaker and you know that they weren't particularly wealthy, you may ask, how did they acquire the film? Does the film have sound? Sound was a late arrival to the amateur scene, and if it's a very early film, it's likely that the soundtrack may have been added later. So there are all sorts of different things that you can use to explore. We're now going to talk about making the catalogue work for you in terms of finding material. We've talked about how using the right words, the keywords, can be quite challenging, but I would advise when you're looking at our CALM catalogue to keep it quite simple and only use 2 search fields. The 2 fields I'm going to suggest you use are the any text field, where you might type in the location that you're looking for, and the finding number field. And I'm suggesting that you include AV with an asterisk, which is a wildcard. The date can also be helpful, but you can always sort by date once you've got some results to work with. So here we are, I'm suggesting you put in any text, is highlighted in the top there, and then the finding number field, I'm suggesting you use AV and an asterisk. So we're talking about using geographical locations. In the any text field, I would type the location that you're looking for, and in the finding number field, use AV, and this will return all audiovisual items with that keyword included. This will give you a catalogue-based start, and then you'll need to view the item at Hampshire Record Office. But this isn't the only way in, and as you probably saw from the slide that I skipped ahead to, this isn't the only way in. In a time when we're increasingly reliant on online access, you could choose to start with watching films either on our YouTube channel or on the BFI Player's free section. A screenshot of our YouTube channel here, and you can actually search our YouTube channel using keywords as well. We have tried to organise things in playlists, and we are in the process of kind of relabeling and restructuring our YouTube channel so that the titles are a little bit more helpful than they might have been in the past. Look at the BFI player. Past the BFI player. So the BFI player will be on my next slide. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, here we go. The BFI player is a fantastic resource, and we were involved in a project recently called Britain on Film, Unlocking Film Heritage, and we contributed a number of films, over 100 in fact, to the project. So if you visit the BFI player in the free section and include Wessex as one of the key search terms, you will return over 114 films of Wessex Film and Sound Archives that are in collection, and you can view those all online. So, how to present film and sound in your digital publication? There are a number of different options open to you according to your own particular circumstances. I'm going to run through a few of them now, but what I would advise you to do is, if you have any questions regarding particular avenues here that I can't answer today, definitely do your own research, because there are kind of ways and means to use material, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. So you can embed content or share URLs. So if you're publishing online, you can embed content that is already publicly available, like for example on our YouTube channel. You can refer out to items elsewhere via a URL, and this is a great and widely used way of disseminating information that already exists on our platforms, and allows the archive and the filmmakers to remain appropriately credited. If you plan to share things this way, there's no formal requirement to ask permission, but you may want to share your publication with us, as it is possible we might do some onward sharing for you, because we always love hearing about new research. Another way is requesting content and permissions directly from Wessex Film and Sound Archive. So if you wish to use stills or clips from WFSA, it's good practice to ask permission. In many cases, WFSA can provide material for non-commercial and commercial use for a fee. Wessex Film and Sound Archives does not own a lot of the film material and the collection, and therefore it's part of our own processes to check with filmmakers or filmmakers' families that they are happy for their work to be used in a particular way, in order that we meet our own legal obligations to depositors. In many cases, the film that you might be seeking to use could be a home movie, and there may be family sensitivities to also take into account. You may also have heard of fair dealing. Fair dealing is a legal framework that allows for the use of works without expressly seeking permission first. There are ways that you can use film in this way, but I would definitely recommend that you always ask permission first for your own peace of mind, as much as a moral obligation to the filmmaker. The British Library has some really good information around fair dealing, and I will share the link after the session today. But also, David Lee, the former archive manager of Wessex Film and Sound Archive, has produced a guide for using AV material and has some really helpful comments on copyright, and his document is on the Hampshire Archives Trust website. I'm not an expert in fair dealing myself, but there are two elements that are worth highlighting here that might be relevant to yourselves, and it's worth a more detailed look if you feel it might be something you're able to make use of. These apply to content that has been made publicly available. I would add a note of caution that there has been little in the way of legal testing of fair dealing, and that you should make your own explorations in order to feel confident that the way you're using things is appropriate. Fair dealing can include use for non-commercial research, which is when material is used for purposes of a non-commercial research purpose, and it does not infringe any copyright in the work provided that is accompanied by sufficient acknowledgement. Fair dealing also lists criticism and review, and there is an increasing trend towards audiovisual essays, which are a growing field in academia. These video documents typically present around 2,000 words of content around a particular film or range of films, and they generally critique the film. It's essentially a textual analysis, and it's a very film studies based form. I haven't actually seen this done yet for local archive film, only for professionally produced content that is publicly available. So if you're technically minded, you might consider using this format to tell local histories where the film is your key source. Today, I've talked about the ways in which film and sound can inform local history research and the benefits of starting with a film and working outwards rather than the other way around. I've talked about geographical focus being the most likely way to yield results, and I've provided some hints for ways to catalogue for film and sound. I hope you found it interesting, and I am available on the Q&A very soon.
After Zoe's video, David Lee, who founded the Wessex Film and Sound Archive, said that a great asset of oral history was that you could actually hear the voice of the speaker. He recalled how a silent film about the building of the Western Docks in Southampton in the 1930s had been transformed by a voiceover of a raw oral recording of one of the men involved, called Taffy Tudor. He also emphasised that when using film and sound, it's always better to embed digital files rather than give links to the internet, as such links often disappear. So basically, you embed the digital file for the film and sound within the digital page that you're creating. He mentioned the standards FFV1 for digital film and video and .wav, preferably the broadcast version, for sound. These standards are accessible from the Association of Sound and Audiovisual Archives website. As regards ethical standards, David said the needs of people with hearing difficulties and other disabilities may require subtitles. Also, as well as respecting copyright, Audio-visual materials should be used properly, without such changes as enhancement or speeding up. When using film and sound in local history projects, he recommended using the records as a start, with text written to follow, rather than vice versa. Members of the Hampshire Archives Trust can find David Lee's comprehensive Film and Sound, a User's Guide on the Hampshire Archives Trust website. So that's the end of this session, from page to product. Special thanks are due to Mary Harris for hosting the session, but unfortunately, for technical reasons, her presentation could not be presented live. Thank you very much for watching.